Haliburton's got the ball. Haliburton rises up. And there's a whistle. Oh, my goodness. Tyrese Haliburton hits a three and is fouled.
You have got to be kidding me.
McConnell underneath the basket. Looking. Toppin in the corner for three.
Oh, yeah! Yeah! OB!
Pacers have it, a chance to tie.
Yeah, Nembhard!
Hits the three! Nembhard gives Indiana the lead!
Hello and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, the home for everything blue and gold during this playoff run. And Pacer fans, what a start it has been in this series. The Pacers are up 2-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks after a great win in Game 2 on Tuesday night. Tyrese Haliburton is orchestrating like a maestro, the starters stepping up in big ways, and Gainbridge Fieldhouse has been absolutely electric. But now it's time to pack up those bags and head north because Game 3 shifts to Milwaukee, where the Bucks are going to be desperate to defend home court and try to get back into the series. We've got a lot to break down about last night's game. We're going to have some key takeaways, standout performances, and what the Pacers need to do to keep this momentum rolling on the road. Let's dive in as this playoff run is only just getting started. So my name is Logan. I am the host of this podcast. It is a Pacers podcast, but we also do some Indiana Fever as well. But once that season starts, we'll get into that, do some season preview, and talk about this preseason game that's coming up for the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark. But this time around, this episode is going to be all about the Indiana Pacers, the number 4 seed versus the number 5 seed. Game 2, Tuesday, April 22nd. The Indiana Pacers pull out a win, 123 over 115 for the Milwaukee Bucks. Game 2 notes, sellout crowd was at Game 2, 17,274, and they were all rocking those towels for the City Edition court kit, whatever you might call it. Jerseys, sorry, I said kit. I'm used to my soccer roots, but yeah, the City Edition towels were in full force. Pacer fans showed up in bunches and were extremely loud. Rick Carlisle said it's the loudest that building has ever been, that he's been in it, and he's been in that building quite some time. He's been around the Pacers for a very long time, and he said it was an extremely electric environment, and he cannot thank you all enough. So Pacer fans, well done. You've done what you've needed to do. You backed your team, and they are ahead 2-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks, heading away from home, hoping to steal a game in Milwaukee and bring it back to Indiana to close it out. We'll talk about some predictions and everything else that goes into Game 3 as well. We will do 2 different episodes. So this is going to be Game 2 recap. We're going to do a Game 3 preview. I'm going to split these up so these episodes aren't as long. We'll talk about keys of the game and things like that in the next episode for the Pacers and what changes need to be made. We'll talk about some improvements and different things that they could have done better in Game 2. So that'll kind of segue us into the next episode that will be dropping. I'm going to drop that on Thursday, so be on the lookout for that as we start to preview and pregame the Indiana Pacers traveling to Milwaukee. That game will be at 8 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, April 25th. You can catch that game on ESPNU and NBA TV. I had no idea that ESPNU still existed, but you can catch the game there. If you don't have those games there, you can try to find it on FanDuel Indiana, which they've been broadcasting the games as well. I think they go all the way up until the Eastern Conference Finals with that. Don't quote me. I don't quite know because I don't get those games. It always shifts over to the national broadcast because I'm not in the market. I'm in Florida. So watching the Pacer games, I typically watch the national broadcast anyway. And I do like it because a lot of times they're trying to talk. Like last night, I was watching on NBA TV and all they wanted to talk about was the headline that we're getting ready to get into, Dame's return for Game 2. And they focused all on what Dame and Giannis were doing. And then on the side, they'll just kind of discuss what the Pacers are doing well. And that typically is how a national broadcast will go. They always talk about the team that has the bigger player, and that seems to always be the team that the Pacers are going up against, even though we have really great players and a collective unit that I think is one of the best in the league. But that being said, let's get into the game itself and some of the headlines that were going into Game 2. And the biggest headline, like I said, the only thing that was being discussed prior to this game and all over X, and if you're a Pacers fan, or if you're a Pacer fan, you probably didn't want to look at social media during this time or any of the pregame things, because all they wanted to talk about was what Damian Lillard, his return, meant to the Milwaukee Bucks, how this was going to be a series now because he was returning to the Milwaukee Bucks. And all the fans over on X were saying that the series was over. The Bucks were going to win it in 6. So that was the storyline heading up into Dame's return. And Damian Lillard was upgraded to questionable on Monday. So you kind of felt this was coming on Monday. But it wasn't until yesterday, about a couple hours before the game during shoot around, that Damian Lillard came out and just said, yeah, I'm playing. And so he plays his first game since March 18th due to a blood clot in his right calf. Made a very swift recovery. Doctors were shocked by how quickly he recovered. He did say before the game, they asked him about what does it mean for your minutes and what does a minutes restriction look like for you? And they even asked Doc, but Damian basically said he was going to play and he was going to let Doc know how he felt throughout the game. So here's his quote. Honestly, it's just really how I feel. He said, according to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, I'm going to communicate to Doc how I'm feeling. There's no real way to simulate being in an NBA game, let alone a playoff game. So I'm really just going in with intentions to be out there with my team, and I'm going to give everything that I got. I'll just build from there. He builds from there. He scores 14 points on 4 of 13 from the field and in 37 minutes. So he plays a 37-minute load last night, and that's a lot of minutes for a guy coming back, hadn't played over a month, and he did not look sharp. There were moments where he had flashes of what Dame can do to affect this series, but it just didn't look the same, especially shooting. It could have had a lot to do with who was guarding him, but we'll talk a little bit more about what went on in the game. I just wanted to preface all this game summary and all the discussion that we're getting ready to have with the fact that the headline was Dame returns for game 2. It was the first time that he and Giannis have ever shared the court in the playoffs. Last year, remember, Antetokounmpo, I always say Giannis. I always try to pronounce his last. Antetokounmpo, I think, is how you say the last name, but I hear people always try to say the last name and butcher it, so people just call him Giannis. So he missed 6 games last year because of a calf issue. So this is the first time he and Dame have played together in a playoff series. Just a couple more notes before we get into the actual game itself. 94.9% chance to advance in this first round when you win the first 2 games at home. 7-game series. Pacers looking really good as far as the odds are concerned. And then if you take all of the series in an NBA playoff game, in the NBA playoffs every year, all series that start 2-0 and are the new, I guess there's different formats that have existed in the NBA, but now how they do it is 2 games at home, 2 games away, and then you alternate. So then you would go back to Indy, then Milwaukee for game 6, then back to Indy for game 7. In those in 7-game series as a whole, if the team starts out with a 2-0 lead at home in any of the playoff series, that percentage is 92.5. So again, 94.9 in that first round if you win the first 2 games. And then if you take in consideration all the other series that have been played that are 7 games, that percentage is a 92.5. So basically the best way to put that, Pacers have over a 90% chance to advance to the next round because they've won the first 2 games at home. It becomes extremely difficult. You have to think of it like this. So there are 7 games in this series. Pacers win the first 2, so there are 5 left. The Bucks would now have to win 4 of those 5 games to advance past the Pacers. The Pacers, all they now have to do is win 2 of those last 5. So those odds are tremendous for the Indiana Pacers, and they could really do some damage if they go in here in Milwaukee and steal one of these games. Milwaukee can make it a series if they go in and take care of business and win 2 games at home, which they definitely can do. I do want to say that going into this podcast. But let's get into what happened in game 2, because there were a lot of interesting moments and a lot of things that happened that I think are going to set up the rest of this series. And I think some rotations are going to change for the Milwaukee Bucks, especially. I think we're going to see at least one change in the starting rotation, or at least one big change where you see an increase in minutes, and you saw it in game 2. So let's get into the big plays and the summary. Early on, Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam score 13 early points and allow the Pacers to get out to a 16-8 lead. This has been huge for the Pacers in this series. In the season, when the Pacers have struggled, and typically this was against teams that they shouldn't really be struggling against, or these teams that, especially in the last month, where they've made these insane comebacks late, the Pacers have started out very slowly, staying about deadlock even with teams that they shouldn't have any business being even with, especially because they played a lot of games at home, just 2 on the road in April, and I think 7 games on the road in March. They played a lot of games at home to end the season, but the Pacers really do at times struggle to get out of the gates. The Pacers in these first 2 games have come out and beat the doors off of the Milwaukee Bucks. They just absolutely wear them down, getting everything that they could possibly want on the offensive end. And the Pacers' first quarter has been a really high pace, high octane run and gun kind of show, which is always going to benefit the Pacers, especially against this Bucks team that does not really like to get out and run a whole lot. So the Pacers took advantage early on. Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner, huge. Aaron Nesmith hitting a 3 again as well. Andrew Nembhard playing really well defensively. It didn't start to shift until Siakam starts to play with that bench unit. And that bench unit usually includes a combination of TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, Jarris Walker, Thomas Bryant. Like, you start to add in these different pieces and give guys breaks. And really, it really shows when once Tyrese and once Andrew come off of the floor that you start to see a real shift in the way that the offense looks. And then defensively, you start to see that difference being made because Nesmith and Nembhard and Turner are out. So you start to see a different complexion as far as what the Pacers look like defensively and offensively. Pascal Siakam's relied heavily upon. You've got TJ McConnell that's trying to get into the middle of the paint and create from there, hitting some of those short, 5 to 10 foot jumpers that he hits. He usually hits them at a very high clip, especially in the playoffs. He's usually exceptionally good at getting inside and getting his own against guys that you really didn't think that he would be able to shoot over. There's been times where he's taken on like Giannis or even like Kuzma or somebody like that, where they're much bigger than he is, or Porter Jr., and he just flat out just goes right by him. And he's been getting to the paint relatively well. Obi Toppin hasn't really shown up too much in this series yet. He had a really good end to the season and probably was one of the 3rd or 4th best players for the Indiana Pacers over the last couple of months. But he hasn't really gotten engaged as much. It's been a lot more of TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, and Siakam with that bench group. It was a lot of back and forth. Bobby Portis came in. He started to look good, and he started to hit some inside shots, hit some triples, and then it got really messy and kind of clunky where teams weren't really scoring after a 40 to 30 that was the score at the end of the first quarter. That's what I'm trying to say. 40 points for the Pacers, 30 points for the Bucks, a high production, as far as production is concerned, very high scoring first quarter. That's what I was trying to say. Could not get those words out. But this first quarter, a lot of points scored. Second quarter looked a lot more of teams getting settled in, playing better defense, but also missing a lot of shots and a couple of gritty possessions. Pacers would go back up to, a 14-point lead, and then it would be brought back down to 10 and then back to 12 and 14. Like it kind of just fell into that lull of just going back and forth. They kept blowing or throwing punches, blowing shots, blowing missed opportunities, a lot of open layups that were missed. It just got really sloppy and kind of ugly there for a bit in the second quarter. And it wasn't until Nembhard and Haliburton start to come in again, and then you start to find them. Nembhard started to find Tyrese Haliburton. Tyrese Haliburton was hitting some threes. Defensively, they looked a lot better, but they were still letting Giannis get what he wanted. He had a couple of layups and was able to kind of back down some of the smaller guys, get his own shots. He was hitting free throws last night, so that was a big difference compared to game one. Giannis actually went 6 of 10, which was a little bit better than, and I think he starts the game 4 of 4 or 5 of 5. He started to shoot really well, and then he kind of tailed off towards the end. But I felt like it just felt like he shot better than game one, I guess, from the field or from the free throw line. But maybe it's just because he didn't have as many free throws to take in game two that he did in game one. The Bucks climb back in it. They get down by 4 right around halftime, and then the Pacers kind of go on a little bit of a spurt, and they actually end the half up 68-60. They had a chance there at the end where Nesmith almost dunks it over Brook Lopez. The ball gets blocked, and it would have taken that roof off of the building at Gamebridge. And Brook played really well as far as the defensive side of the ball. He had a couple of blocked shots in the first half, but then after that, he just kind of disappeared because Bobby Portis was playing so well. And we'll talk about what these rotations look like and what Doc Rivers might do to kind of change that up for game 3. But we'll also talk about it here towards the end of the episode, just by what effectiveness does Brook Lopez really have for this Bucks team. But the Pacers, again, they kept getting their chances. They were throwing punches back. It never got really that close, except for that 4-point lead that they had. But then they got right back up to the 8-point lead before halftime. So it wasn't really a prolonged period in which they were playing really close game in that first half. And then coming out in the third quarter, the Pacers went on a 10-2 run, and they looked really good. I mean, there were moments then that I thought that the Pacers really could have stepped on the gas, which is something we'll talk about too later on in this episode as we get into the nitty gritty of what meat potatoes of what happened in game 2. But yeah, they just kept going back and forth in this 8-12 range. Sometimes jump up to 14, sometimes to 16. And then it would come back to the Bucks being up down by 8, and they would close in, and then the Pacers would get away from them again. And in the third quarter, that's typically what happened. 15-point lead for the Pacers, 8 minutes to go. Siakam was carrying the team. Nembhard was hitting shots, but Portis was matching them with threes, and he was getting everything that he possibly wanted. He and Giannis went on a good stretch there. And then in the fourth quarter, that's when you really started to see Giannis and Bobby Portis take over. They started to hit a bunch of shots. Nesmith was good in that fourth quarter. Nembhard was good in that fourth quarter. Pascal was really good in that fourth quarter. So they were starting to kind of get their scoring going. And then again, Bobby Portis just keeps hitting threes, keeps hitting twos, keeps finding Giannis. He and Giannis ended up just combining for a lot of points. And a short stretch, I think it was he and Giannis that were the only ones that really scored in the fourth quarter. I want to see, because I want to break this down, because it was to the point where it was noticeable how many points that they had together in the fourth quarter in this game. So Bobby had 11, I believe, in the fourth. I had this up, but I can't remember where I put it. Bobby had 11, and I think Giannis has like 16 or 18 or something like that. Like he and Giannis were going off. I'm going to pull up the stats here just because I want to be sure. I don't want to say something and it not be. But anyway, I'll just kind of talk as I'm pulling this up. But Bobby Portis, I mean, what a difference he made in this game in the fourth quarter, and especially for a team that really needed some offense besides just Giannis, because Dame hadn't really gotten going. He was struggling from three. Giannis had 10. Okay, so Giannis had 10, Bobby had 11. And then Porter Jr. had 4, and Damian Lillard had that 3 in the fourth quarter. That was a huge shot. It was from way out. It was like a 30-foot bomb from Damian Lillard that got it really close. The Pacers ended up at the end of the fourth quarter 115-113 when Rick calls that timeout, and then the Pacers go on that 8-2 run to end the game, and they end up winning 123-115. But yeah, as I was pulling up the stats, I mean, I'm just thinking about the fact of, like, had the Pacers not gotten out to that first quarter run that they had gotten on, and the Bucks having to try to dig out from behind all the time, they never led in this game. The Bucks having to dig out from 8 to 10 points is so difficult in the NBA, especially in the playoffs, because teams are going to answer your runs. So even if you get down by 16, you go on an 8-0 run, you're still down 8, and then the Pacers fought back and clawed back, got it back to 12. That's so exhausting for a team that's not got a lot of depth in the Bucks. I mean, you're really starting to see the differences and the discrepancies there, where the Pacers have such a deep lineup where they can go about 10 deep to find reliable players. And in this game especially, I felt like, everybody contributed in some way, and they played 10 guys. So the Pacers really did. They found ways to keep fighting back whenever the Bucks would try to get close. And that was the difference, because they're in the fourth quarter, it was getting a little freaky. It was getting a little hairy, as they would say. So 115-113, I was not feeling very good, because if the Bucks steal one there, this Bucks team can go into Milwaukee and win 2 games, and that could have been a disaster because you could be coming back to Indianapolis down 3-1. And I know the Pacers are good at home, but that would have meant you had to go and win 3 straight. And that's very difficult to do, I think, against this Bucks team just because Giannis and Dame exist. So we'll see what happens. They're gonna go and try to win 3 games straight against a Milwaukee team that is wounded, that is down, that is desperate, and desperation can often lead to some really good performances, especially from guys that are world-class players like Damian Lillard and Giannis. So we'll see. We'll know on Friday if the Pacers have what it takes to kind of fight and claw and stay in games in Milwaukee with that home crowd. Some keys to the Game 2 victory: starting fast, 40-point first quarter, highest mark for the franchise in playoff history. So again, these Pacers are starting the games extremely well. And last year, I started to think about this. Last year, I felt like the games that they won, and they mostly won on their home floor, so it makes sense. But they got out to fast starts. It's games on the road where you really struggle to get going, especially at the pace the Pacers want to play, because typically the Pacers' pace on the road has not been great. It's been okay. It's not really the pace in which they want to play, especially in the playoffs. But I do feel like the Pacers make really good adjustments. I think they made some interesting adjustments in this game too, in zone play, the way that they defended Giannis. We'll kind of talk about what they did to change, what they did in game 1. Because again, when you lose a game in the playoffs, that's when you make those adjustments, a ton of adjustments. And when you win a game in the playoffs, you're typically just making adjustments to adjust against the team that's making adjustments. So it's really interesting because the Pacers came out and pretty much did the same exact thing that they did in game 1, and the Bucks had no answer. They just could not figure it. And we'll talk about why I think this is, but the Bucks just had no answer for the offense. Pascal Siakam had 8 points in the first, Nesmith 6, Haliburton 7, Turner 7, Nembhard 3. He played really good defense on Dame. And so did Nesmith, because Nesmith had to guard Dame and Giannis in both scenarios because Nembhard got in foul trouble. He had 3 assists. Nembhard did as well. He just kept breaking down the offense, and it's so important when Tyrese can't really break down the offense, because they try to eliminate Tyrese Haliburton, picking him up half court, full court, depending on the team and the matchup. They try to get the ball out of Haliburton's hands as quickly as possible. But Nembhard's done such a good job as the secondary ball handler, which is something that we've talked about in this, first game recap. But really, I mean, before I started this podcast and throughout the season, they've talked about how important it was that Andrew Nembhard really started to learn how to be the secondary ball handler once Tyrese was out, because should he miss games for injury, or should Tyrese get locked up by one of these really good defenders, can Nembhard step up and propel this team forward? He was good. It's very serviceable in the regular season, but there's just an extra level to Nembhard, I think, in the playoffs. He just becomes one of those guys that really lives up to the stage, and he doesn't get scared of the lights that come on that are too bright, and he loves it. I mean, he's been the best player, I think, in this series, not named Giannis. So we'll talk about him. We'll talk about all these players when we get into kind of the stats and areas where we think they played well. But another thing that the Pacers did extremely well is they kept answering, and we talked about this. They kept answering, pushing back against the Bucks. Every time they go on a run, we'd go on a run. The only time that they really got out to a really good run and we didn't really have an answer until really late in the game when it was crunch time was that 13-0 run that they went in the fourth quarter, and they brought it all the way back to a 2-point deficit. But then the Pacers stepped on the gas and closed them out, which you really like to see for a team that has been deemed as a young team still. I think people do forget that as well. This Pacer team is still learning quite a bit. They went through a Bucks team last year that was pretty much depleted. They went through a Knicks team that just, by the end of the series, Jalen Brunson was basically unplayable. OG was out. You had Mitchell Robinson out. There was so many issues with the Knicks that they ran through. And then once they got to that Boston series, that's when you really saw the youth come out, because I think every game the Pacers in the fourth quarter had a lead of like 3 or 4 points. So, and lost every single game, got swept. But you really want to see what the Pacers have in these kind of moments. Now, I think what the biggest thing will be is them taking this on the road and capitalizing in moments like this as well. So we're learning at home. We've got these games where I think last year Pacers maybe lose this game. And in the regular season, we've seen them lose games like this where they build these incredible leads and then let teams fight and claw and fight and claw. And then they're back into it. And Pacers have to save themselves by hitting a buzzer beater, but they might lose these games and drop these games because they just lose focus. This was really nice to see them coming out and going on that 8-2 run to end the game. The biggest thing for me for the team is getting out to those fast starts. But the next biggest thing was getting to the foul line. And I felt like the Pacers really, game plan for that. I feel like they had an emphasis on going to the rim more. They were 19 of 19 from the free throw line. So not one free throw missed. That is huge in the playoffs. If you look at the free throw battle and the rebound battle and the turnover battle in the playoffs, you can typically tell which team's coming out on top just based on the percentages that they hit, on the amount of turnovers that they have, or the rebound battle as far as like who wins it and by how much. The turnover battle was huge. 8 turnovers for the Pacers, 15 for the Bucks. You're not going to beat a Pacers team by turning the ball over in double digits. Like, and that's really tough because I mean, when teams are at home in the playoffs, you see them, the intensity of the defense is so good and so high to a level where I don't think in the regular season you really see it. So they do get a lot of turnovers in the NBA playoffs because of that intensity, that focus of getting the ball and then getting out and running. And that's what the Pacers want to do. So when the Bucks are turning the ball over 15 times a game, that really plays into the hands of what the Pacers want to do. The Pacers want to run. They want to get out. They are a fast-paced team. They don't want you to have to set your half-court defense. They don't want to waste time in the shot clock to get their shots, which I actually felt like the Pacers really did take a lot of time to get into their shots in this game. And I think that's some of the adjustment that the Bucks made. But honestly, I think it comes down to, the Pacers really wanting to cause you headaches on the defensive end, getting some turnovers and getting points off those turnovers. 10 to 15 points off those turnovers is typically what happens. And that's huge. I mean, that and Doc Rivers talked about it. Those turnovers were the reason why they lost. They lost the game because they gave the Pacers 10 to 15 points on those turnovers. And I agree. You cannot give the team more possessions, especially when they are a high efficiency offense like the Pacers. They score a lot of points and they hit a lot of their shots. Their field goal percentage is always really good. They're very efficient. So it's very dangerous to try to play that game. And the Pacers, this is something that is so big. And I've watched so many Pacers teams in the past that were notorious for turning the balls over. And it gets to a point where it's so frustrating because you're just giving away free points at this point. The Pacers just don't do that because Tyrese Haliburton, and there was another article that was out before the game started. 90 some odd NBA players voted anonymously for the most overrated player being Tyrese Haliburton, and by a long shot. But in these 90 players are probably 14 of them are Bucks players, and the other 10 or 15 or Pistons player. Like it's funny because they usually send out this survey to pretty much every NBA player, but a lot of them choose just not to go into that. But I just imagine like the Pistons and Bucks getting together and being like, we got to all vote for Tyrese being the most overrated, and the Knicks fans too, or Knicks players. But yeah, it just the amount of pressure that Tyrese Haliburton puts on a defense and doesn't turn the ball over is a tremendous advantage. I mean, just think about that. He's an assist machine. He gets guys wide open. I mean, these Pacers are getting deeper into the shot clock because they're not taking like good shots. They're taking really good shots. They're moving the ball. There were multiple times, and there are still multiple times per game, per quarter, that you see Tyrese Haliburton hit somebody wide open who hit somebody else who's even more wide open. Like it's amazing to me when the Pacers are doing what they're doing on offense and doing what they're supposed to be doing on offense is moving the ball. Reminds me of the old Spurs teams with Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and Tim Duncan, where that ball just never stopped. And it wears defenses out because you have so much rotation. And especially because the Pacers have so many mismatch opportunities because Miles Turner can hit a three, but he can also go down low and get at least a couple of points in the paint. You've got Pascal who can hit a three, go to the elbow, hit shots, hit a fadeaway, go to the rack. He can play as a point guard at points. You've got Tyrese Haliburton who can hit threes, who can hit mid-range jumpers, who's going to take it to the rim, but oftentimes finding guys and locating guys in corners to hit threes. Nesmith has become very reliable once he attacks the rim, and he can hit threes at a very high clip. Andrew Nembhard in the playoffs is a really good three-point shooter, where in the regular season he's below 30%, but you start to see all these things. And Andrew Nembhard, I mean, he hasn't found a mid-range jumper that he doesn't hit at like a 90% level. So it just becomes so difficult to defend these Pacers because they don't rely on one person every game to get 30 points. Giannis is going to get 30 points, and they know that. The Pacers know that. You can game plan against that. Dame is going to shoot his shots, and you know that. But besides that, Bobby Portis could have 10 points. He could have 30 points like he did, almost 30 points that he did in this game. There's nights where he could have 7. Like there's nights where he could go cold. So he's easier to prepare for. And there's only really things that he does. He hits threes and he likes those mid-range jumpers. He's not really known to kind of post you up and try to take you down low all the time. Like that's just not his game. So again, these Pacers become so difficult to prepare for. And then you add in the mixture of TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin and Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker. Like this is it's a beast to try to defend this team, especially with how fast they want to go, how in shape they are, how smart they all are. It becomes so difficult. Just ask the teams that tried to stop those Spurs teams under Popovich. It just becomes a difficult, tall task, and especially in a 7-game series to try to beat them 4 times is extremely difficult. That's really what it was. Those are the keys to my Game 2 win. Some areas of improvement that I felt like Game 2, things that didn't go well in Game 2, rebounding. This one I highlight because this is what lost them games against the Knicks last year, and this was very noticeable. Whenever the Pacers were out rebound, I think they lost. I think it became to a point where it was like every game that they lost the rebound battle, they lost the game. And there are some times where you lose the rebound battle, like tonight, but you still win the game because of how hot your offense is. You can withstand this sometimes. But the Bucks had 12 offensive rebounds, and this is a big concern for me, just because, again, this is exactly what the Knicks did last year when you had Hartenstein and he was just kind of tipping the ball out, or Josh Hart would get like 8 to 10 boards, and you're just like, what is happening? Like, get the rebound, just grab the board. And this can become dangerous against a team like Cleveland, who would be up next, because Cleveland's got guys that are going to go grab rebounds. They've got a lot of guys that can rebound on that team. They're a bigger team. They're a lengthier team. They will get offensive boards. And if Mobley and Jared Allen are getting offensive rebounds, that is a disaster, because they are low post kind of guys and they'll score. And I'm not sure the Pacers really have the length to be able to deal with them too much. So in that game will be, that series will be very interesting should the Pacers get to that one. And we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but you got to rebound in the playoffs, because you can't have these teams getting second chances, because Cleveland, they've got the big guys that can score. Donovan Mitchell will rebound every once in a while. But then if you go to that next series, you talk about, possibly playing the Celtics. If you're letting the Celtics get 2 shots every 8 possessions or so, you're going to get outscored. Like, that's just the way they can score at a dangerous level. And so you're playing with fire if you're letting the team out rebound you. And a lot of this goes down to getting the guards to rebound, because Miles isn't typically going to grab you 10 boards. So you got to help him out in that area, because that's just not an area he's a strength in. So you got to get Nesmith, Nembhard, you got to get Ben, Obi, and Pascal. You got to defend, or you got to grab boards. Pascal did. Pascal had a double-double yesterday, so it was very exciting. Pace of play when stagnant. You can have a slower pace, but you can't be stagnant and just shoot the ball or go one-on-one a lot where you're not moving the basketball. And their pace is so slow when they do start to get they become stagnant when the pace is so slow, and they tend to rely on shooting a lot of threes. There were moments in this game where the Pacers could have absolutely put the Bucks away. And this leads into my next point. There were multiple times that it's happened where Benedict Mathurin and Haliburton get 3 happy. and Pascal's done this at times too, where he kind of gets into this. He goes up for a very difficult shot on the elbow where, you're shooting over a taller defender like Giannis, and you had a moment just to move the ball, like just move it. It's been working, and that's something the Pacers can typically get away from at times, and that's when you start to see their pace slow down, is when they stop moving the basketball. Because eventually, if you're moving the basketball so much and you're not turning the ball over anyway, so you might as well see what happens if you move it. When they move the basketball, you're going to force a team to try to run out and get you. And there's just going to be so many moving pieces and parts where teams can't keep up with you. So it's naturally going to keep that pace high because people are running around the floor trying to defend you. And that ultimately causes them, when they do get rebounds, to want to run too. The Bucks are much more successful when they can set up a half-court offense and a half-court defense. And the Pacers are better off when you can get a shot in the first 6 to 8 seconds of the shot clock. So there's a lot of things that I think the Pacers can take away from these games when you talk about the gaps in which they weren't good. So going to that fourth quarter run, what happened? And a lot of it's one-on-one ball. They're not good at that. Like they don't have the guy. And I think they have people that could get to that level. And I think Nembhard is there sometimes. Tyrese is there sometimes. Pascal there sometimes. But they don't have like Giannis. They don't have a guy that can just get out of the way. I'm going to score 10 straight right here. They just don't. They've not proven that they have that yet. Nembhard, I think, is probably the closest one that I've actually seen in the playoffs, because Pascal, while he can do that at times, he's not typically somebody that's going to shoot 5 times in a row down the floor. Where I think Nembhard sometimes gets where he's like, you know what, I'm going to do it. Let me take over. And he did this against the Celtics last year when they were really desperate to get a win at home when they went back and Tyrese wasn't playing. Is Andrew, there were moments where he'd go down every time, and it was, I'm going to score. And he did. There were multiple times where he's approaching 30 points or over 30 points where he just takes over games. But they don't have, they were hoping Benedict Mathurin would become that. He's not really there yet, and this is his first playoff experience. So they're relying on guys that aren't typically that successful going one-on-one, but are way more successful when moving the ball. And I think the Pacers kind of get, shot happy, where they're just not trying to get to the rim. And that's something as a younger team you learn that getting to the foul line in those moments, because nothing would bury this Bucks team more if you continue to move the basketball, get those screens, and just get to the line. I mean, you're 19 of 19 from the free throw line. Might as well get there a couple more times. 6 more, 8 more free throws. Get fouled 3 or 4 more times by trying to get to the rack. Like, that completely changes this game. That will stop any run. Runs are typically stopped by obviously hitting a shot or getting to the free throw line. It just kind of sets up for that, that run to be disrupted because it's just not in the flow of the game. So again, I wish the Pacers would be better in those areas where because if I'm sitting there in the film room, that's where I would take those games where they've gone into kind of an offensive lull and go, okay, what's happening here? Where can we be better when we get into these? Because they've really been far and few between. They're usually, 2, maybe 3 stretches and when that's happening. And I know one of them is usually typically when that bench unit's playing with Pascal. That can get very stagnant because Toppin's not really somebody that's going to create on the dribble. McConnell's the only one that's really creating on a dribble. Mathurin, he can, but there's a lot of times where he's more content just kind of pulling back and trying to shoot a 3 or 2 long 2 over somebody rather than just taking his full body and his strength into somebody and taking him, because he does it once in a while, but it's not like he's trying to do it. If I was him, I'd try to do it as many times as you could possibly do it until you really just feel like you can't do it anymore. But because he's got that ability, I just don't think he's quite there yet, but I think he'll figure it out. That's pretty much it as far as areas improvement, because I just feel like when the Bucks have gone zone, the Pacers have done a pretty good job of knocking them out of it, which is huge going forward, because I think teams will try to deploy a zone against the Pacers because of how fast they like to play. But I feel like TJ McConnell, Pascal, they use Tyrese in the middle of the zone, which was very interesting because Nembhard is a good ball handler. He then takes it over, or Pascal can take over the ball handling for possessions, and you put Tyrese in the middle, and it causes all sorts of confusion for the Bucks. So that can become very interesting. A couple of notes that I wanted to make, some things that I want to point out because I thought they were very interesting, like little pieces and nuggets in the game that I don't know if other people had seen, or if you did see these, just kind of shout it out. And I want to know what your guys' thoughts are. I know everybody noticed these things because the cameras and stuff focus on this, but the amount of scuffles that this team gets into with this Bucks team, this is such a high intensity, like a very similar to 1990s, early 2000 series where it's just so physical and guys just beat up on each other. There were times where there was one possession where I think it was Porter Jr. falls down and he like tripped up Pascal, and then Pascal tripped up somebody else, and then Toppin went flying and they all were on the floor together, and it was like, what is happening? And the announcer, I forget who the guy is, but the announcer was on NBA TV was like, man, there's bodies hitting the floor everywhere. And it was just a stretch of 8 to 10 guys just falling down in a stretch of a minute and a half. It was a lot of fun, but it's just so physical. And the one thing that, and I think it was Alex Golden from Setting the Pace that said this, is that he wished that they wouldn't get as involved with the Bobby Portis. Maybe it was Tony East, but they were talking about like, let's not get involved with the Bobby Portis stuff because Bobby typically plays better when people are getting him fired up. And I agree. I think if you would ignore him, he would kind of lose his, I don't know, he gets real wild looking. His eyes gets real big, and then he's like clapping and stuff. He's always clapping and like laughing and looks maniacal. And I feel like if you don't play into that, because every time that we've ever faced anybody on that, like in other sports that I've played, where you have somebody that's passionate, if you just kind of ignore it, you kind of just diffuse it because there would be nothing for him to really react to. If you're not reacting, you're not giving him what he wants. He wants you to react because it fires him up. It's kind of like what Tyrese does. Tyrese will find moments coming up in the playoffs, and especially on the road. He likes to do this on the road. And so does TJ McConnell. You'll notice he'll try to get a fan involved, and they'll take the bait. And Tyrese is a much better player when that happens. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I'm saying he's like a different level kind of player, like Reggie-ish, because he gets so fired up because that fan's engaging with him. It's the same thing with TJ. You ever watch those two on away playoff games? You can always see them chirping at somebody on the sidelines. It's because it gets them fired up. It's what motivates them some. So same thing with Bobby Portis. He's just that kind of player where I just feel like if you're better off just leaving him alone, just let him do his weird things and let him clap and whatever. And then he'll kind of just lose his allure. And I actually think he loses some of his edge when you're not trying to fight back with him. Another nugget. This is really interesting. And I should have pulled a picture or like a still of what this looks like, but there were multiple times yesterday where the Pacers did something that they weren't really doing game one. And if they were doing it game one, it wasn't really noticeable. And maybe it's because Damian Lillard was out there, but there were these times where Giannis would have the ball or Dame would have the ball at the top. And because Giannis was going out to set the screen or be screened by somebody, Giannis would have the ball most of the time, or like Damian Lillard would give him the ball. And all of a sudden you see it was TJ McConnell usually. And I think Nembhard did it a couple times that I noticed. Tyrese did it a couple times where they do a screen right at the about half court, right below the logo. And Giannis will have the ball or Dame will have the ball, and Dame's always involved and Giannis is always involved. Sometimes Brook with Giannis, like the 4-5 screen, but it's usually a 4-5 screen or a 1-4 screen where the defender on the guard or the smaller person will just jump the screen and like go right at Giannis. Like Giannis is trying to dribble around the screen and TJ McConnell just takes off running, right? And so then the defender that the person screening, they'll drop all the way back to the 3-point line because they know, like, go ahead, shoot that. I dare you to shoot a 35-foot jumper. We'll live with that. But like Giannis especially does this where he gets screened way at the top and then he runs downhill at you. But they weren't letting him get started. Like as soon as they saw a pick coming, TJ McConnell would go sprinting towards Giannis and just like try to push him out towards half court. And the screen couldn't even do anything because the screen's like, whoa, like the defender got there before, like they already switched the screen before the screen could even get there. It was amazing. And then I think Juni Busick probably puts this in play, but just watch it next time. If Giannis is at the top, or it even happened with Dame sometimes where they're up trying to dribble the ball and trying to get off a screen for a pick and roll opportunity. But before the screener can even get there, that defender's flying by the screener and already getting up to it. So they're already switching before the screen can even happen. And I mean, they're just like rushing them. It looks crazy. It broke it down quite a few times. Like Rick Carlisle and Jenny, they definitely have seen something where if they can get the person that was going to be the switch to run at the basketball instead of just allowing the screen to happen, it will detonate what they're supposed to be doing with the pick and roll, because it happened multiple times. So yeah, pay attention. It's Giannis dribbling the ball or Dame with Giannis, and there's a lot of things that happen where there's a lot of things that happen in those situations. Sorry, I got a text on the screen to distract me. Where they're blowing up those screens before they can even happen, it was brilliant. I don't think I've ever seen that, and I don't know if I've ever seen that much focus on blowing up the pick and roll by switching it before the pick and roll even arrives. So yeah, that was fun. What else? Anything else? Yeah, I think that was pretty much it as far as this game's concerned. I mean, it really was a all-out Pacer victory. Hairy moments there in the fourth quarter, but I felt like the Pacers really did a nice job. Andrew Nembhard has got ice in his veins. He does not allow Damian Lillard much room to operate. He did get into some foul trouble, which he typically does against Dame. Dame causes problems because he comes off screens and Nembhard tries to get over the screen or tries to be too aggressive to get over the screen, and Dame ends up stopping short of getting around the screen, and Drew just goes right through him. There was one foul in the corner that was really dumb. He should have let him just shoot it. I mean, you could challenge and throw a hand up, but there was a moment where he closed out way too fast and hard on Dame and knocked him over in the corner. And then Dame goes on to hit his free throws, which I just feel like you can't put a guy, you can't foul a 3-point shooter. You never should foul a 3-point shooter, obviously, but that closeout was just too reckless for me. And times that Drew does that, and Neesmith does it too sometimes. Like he and Neesmith, they're still young, so they still make those mistakes where they just commit too hard or they close out too fast, and end up hitting a shooter. And something I think that they're going to have to learn from. And but looking at the box score, let's go through the box score and talk about the players. So Taurean Prince, he had 6 points. He was a minus 13. He had 4 assists. He had really no impact. He is not somebody that I think impacts this series a whole lot. I just feel like there's a lot of room for improvement for Taurean Prince and everybody else that's not named Giannis, Dame, and Bobby Portis. I just feel like the role players are just not good role players. I just feel like they do not have an idea as to how to play in the playoffs. I think so much of what the Pacers do defensively in the playoffs eliminates so much of what the Bucks role players are trying to do and accomplish, and it's just so difficult. Giannis, 34 points with 7 assists, 18 rebounds. He was 6 of 10 from the free throw line. He was 14 of 20 field goal, which is a tremendous clip. He's so good. He's so hard to stop. Kyle Kuzma, 5 of 10, 0 for 3 from three-point line, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, -7 and plus minus, and he was a 12-point scorer. He looked a lot better. In the first quarter, he looked rough. He's still going. He missed 2 wide open layups early on. It was really bad. He just looks like he's pressing, but I think he's kind of figured that out now. He's got 12 points, which he looked a lot better than what he had, but he's still not somebody that you can rely on. Brook Lopez, he had played only 16 minutes, 3 of 6 from the field. He was 2 of 4 from three-point line. He had 1 rebound, 1 assist. He had 4 blocks. He was blocking all sorts of stuff early. And then he was a -9, and he had 8 points. Damian Lillard, 4 of 13, 2 of 8 from 3, 4 of 5 from the free throw line. He had 3 rebounds, 7 assists. He had 2 turnovers, 14 points, and he was a -7. Bobby Portis, 11 of 19, 6 of 11 from the three-point line, 0 of 1 from the free throw. He had 12 boards, 1 assist, 1 block, 28 points. He was on fire. I mean, it was to a point where in that fourth quarter, I just didn't think he was ever going to miss. He just kept firing him away. And of course, he was getting energized off that, playing well defensively. Like he played tremendous defense on Siakam, and if he'd ever get switched off, on Turner, and then every once in a while he'd be switched off on Siakam and was playing well. And a lot of times Giannis will guard a guard late in the game. He was on Nembhard late in that game when Nembhard hit that huge 3-pointer that was just ice cold. And just a step back on Giannis is so difficult because he's so lengthy and his arms are long, and he's just a difficult person to shoot over. And yeah, Andrew Nembhard from his spot, step back 3 that absolutely sealed it for the Pacers. And he tends to do that quite a bit. He's got ice in those veins. Jericho Sims played. I thought he played pretty well when he was out there. He didn't have any points. He was a +5 though. He was the one of only 3 Bucks players that was a plus. Bobby Portis was a +1. But because the Bucks never had a lead, it's hard to get a plus. But AJ Green, he was a +3, but he only played 12 minutes. He was 0 for 2 from the field, and he was 0 for 1 from 3. He had 2 defensive boards. Jericho Sims pretty much just played really good defense for 8 minutes. Gary Trent, 30 minutes, 1 of 4 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. He was 1 of 1 free throw, and he had 1 board, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 1 turnover. He had 4 points. And then Kevin Porter Jr., 15 minutes, 4 of 9, 1 of 2 from 3. He had 3 assists, 1 rebound, 3 turnovers in 15 minutes. He was a -1 and only had 9 points. Looking at that team, I mean, you can point out so many issues that they had. Taurean Prince is an issue. He just is not efficient enough to defensively, or does he ever really make he's always looking to make the pass, and he's never looking to take shots that he's wide open, because I just don't feel like he has much confidence in his shooting ability. So he's kind of negating everything that the Bucks are getting for him. Kyle Kuzma, again, he was really good the last 3 quarters of the game. He had a good stretch there where he got most of those points. But I feel like defensively, he's just not the same that he was with the Lakers back in the day, where he really just defended really well and was high energy. He's much easier to beat. I think there were times where he was guarding Tyrese full court, and I'm like, you can't keep up with Tyrese full court. What is he doing? And he couldn't. Like, there's just times where he can't guard guards. I mean, the Pacers are just too quick. Like, the only person he really fits on is Aaron Nesmith. I just feel like he can't defend Andrew Nembhard. He can't defend Tyrese. They're too quick for him. And his offensive game is not enough to really keep him to a point where he is a consistent role player and is going to add a whole lot in the series. Brook Lopez, I feel like he's the one that's going to be dropped from this rotation. It'll be interesting. I think Doc is really hesitant to change this starting lineup. I think Brook might start, but it might not be long. I think they're going to give him one more game at home to really see, we'll give you the first 4 to 5 minutes. Let's see how it goes. But the Bucks just really can't afford to trail in this game coming up in Game 3, because the Pacers have absolutely manhandled the Bucks in the first quarter of these games, and it's changed the complexion of what the game looks like completely. I mean, the Bucks can't even get back into the game because the Pacers run away with it in the first quarter, and then they're just fighting the whole time uphill. And Brook Lopez is a reason why that happens. He can't defend anybody. Like, the only thing he defends well now is he stands at the rim and hopes somebody drives, like the Pacers were trying to do in that second quarter, where he blocked quite a few shots and dunk attempts. Like, he's blocked, some really good, powerful moves by Aaron Nesmith that I thought Nesmith would get over him, but he didn't. And Brook had his way in the paint as far as blocking shots. But if you're relying on him to defend any of the perimeter, he can't do that. Like, he just can't. And then when he's showing out on these screens, he can't get there quick enough to stop Tyrese from getting out from behind that pick and to cause that switch. There's so many times where you'll see him kind of go further in. He kind of restricts himself to that free throw line because he can't keep up with Tyrese Haliburton, and Tyrese comes off a screen. And that's a good 3-4 feet that he has advantage over Brook Lopez, because Brook now has to kind of try to show out to try to get to Tyrese and get him away from the 3-point line. But Tyrese just shoots it and Brook can't get to it. So it's an easy 3-point shot for Tyrese. And even if Tyrese starts to head towards the rim, he has a hard time keeping up with where Haliburton's going. And it causes so many breakdowns in the defense because guys are having to try to recover and help out on the weak side. So a lot of issues with Brook Lopez. He's one that I think he can't play in the series. I mean, he just can't. There's just not a good time for him to be out there. And the Bucks podcast that I've listened to, and we'll talk about this more in depth in the Game 3 preview that'll be tomorrow. I just feel like there's a lot of things that are going around that are saying just remove Brook Lopez from the starting rotation. Well, then that puts him in the bench rotation, which is going to be just as much of an issue. So I don't know what you do with Brook. You can't really hide him. So he's got to play. He's a body. He will hit some threes. I think he'll be better at home. I really do. But you get to this point of the season, there's nothing really left on the bench that you can really play. Are you going to go back to Ryan Rollins, who didn't play in this game? Could you rely on Pat? I just don't know. I don't think they would ever go to Andre Jackson Jr. It causes so many issues, and that's where the depth is a big time problem. Because if you put Jericho Sims out there, good, he can defend, but he's not going to score. I mean, he's just not offensively inclined. So there's a lot of problems with Brook Lopez. Damian Lillard, rusty, you could see it. There were times where he dribbled it, and you could just tell by the way he dribbled a basketball. Like there was one time in particular where he goes to dribble, and Tyrese, I think, was in front of him, or Andrew was in front of him, and he dribbled it to where it was just too high, and it kind of went up by his face, and he lost control of it, and they just strip it from him. And that was just him trying to dribble. He was just trying to get around the defender and go towards the pick I think Giannis was setting, and just lost the ball because he just hasn't played. You lose the feel of your ability to handle the basketball, to shoot the basketball when you've taken that much time off. You have to get back to what the feel of the game looks like and the flow of the game. And there were a lot of moments where he was just kind of lingering back and not really involved. And there were also times where Giannis had the ball. I think because he's not used to having Dame back out there. And to be honest with you, they've missed a lot of games. I don't think their chemistry is that good to begin with because they're both very ball dominant players. I just feel like there was times where Giannis would be driving towards, his left hand. Dame is over here on the weak side wide open. There was one in particular, I think it was in the fourth quarter, where Dame was wide open and Giannis just didn't see him at all. And that's still something that Giannis, even though he was better as a distributor later on in the season, he's still not good at. And he turns the ball over a ton. He's prone to turning the ball over. And it reminds me kind of like when LeBron was more in his prime. LeBron actually turned the ball over quite a bit. So it's interesting. It definitely is, because I think Damian Lillard is a great second option and a great player, but I just don't think he's as effective with Giannis out there on the floor. I think they're very good when they're separated, but they're both playing. I just feel like the Giannis and Dame minutes, they just don't go well. Maybe it's Dame doesn't defend well. Giannis has to pick up a lot of that slack, and nobody else defends well on that Bucks team. So there's so much pressure defensively, and that leads to your offense and not being able to get good shots. And the Bucks, I just feel like they're too shallow of a team. They just don't have any depth. They don't have any good role players that really spark a lot of fear in you, except for Bobby Portis. And I think Bobby Portis is going to have more of an integral part in this series. But now the Pacers will game plan for that. So I don't think that looks the same. I don't think he gets 28 points again. So, yeah, Bobby Portis, like I said, 28 points. The best player besides Giannis on the floor was Bobby Portis. He's better than any other Pacers, I think. But the two of them combined cannot beat the overall effort from the team that is the Indiana Pacers. Jericho Sims, what can I say? He's just a defensive body. He does what he's supposed to do. Gary Trent Jr. is, he's been a thorn in the Pacers side at times. But yesterday when he was on the floor, he was on the floor for 30 minutes. It was a lot of minutes. He just didn't add anything. He didn't. And I think, again, this is where having Dame back is great, but also takes away from your role players, because the role players aren't getting as involved. Dame and Giannis are going to take the shots. And then if Bobby's making his, those three are the only ones shooting. There were moments in the fourth quarter, I think that, I don't even know, there was the random 3-pointer by Lillard And then I think Kevin Porter Jr. randomly. They're, they got random scores, but it was mostly Giannis and Bobby, or it's always going to be Damian and Giannis, or Damian and Bobby. Like it's never somebody else. And that's what they need. They need a fourth or fifth guy to at least provide something. But these guys just don't. Like they just don't have that ability. Kevin Porter Jr., even though he scored 9 points, he did a lot of bad things yesterday. Like the turnovers, the flagrant foul when he grabbed Thomas Bryant's foot. Like I was so confused. Like why did you do that? And he just doesn't play smart basketball. He's not a guy that's got a high basketball IQ. He's relies heavily on what he does as an athlete. And I don't feel like he makes the right decisions. AJ Green was a non-factor, which I was actually shocked by. He only played 12 minutes. Only took 2 shots and missed his 3-pointer. But once he misses one, I feel like Doc loses all confidence that he can do anything that provides value. And he struggles defensively because for some reason they try to put him out on a unit where he's out there with Giannis at the 5 or Bobby at the 5. And there's times where he'll try to guard Pascal. And that's just not a good matchup for him. And I think when he tries to guard Nesmith or Nembhard, they're a little too quick for him. If he tries to guard Mathurin, same kind of thing. I just feel like AJ Green really struggles to find a place in this series, which is a shame because they need his 3-point shooting. But maybe he's better at home because he's on the home floor. He's going to have more of an energy. He hits a couple threes, then the Pacers could be in some trouble. But again, he was kind of a non-factor as well. So a lot of non-factors for their role players. Ryan Rollins didn't play. You look at the Pacers, Pascal Siakam, he was 8 of 16, 2 of 5 from 3, 6 of 6 from the free throw line, +8 in the plus-minus category, 24 points, 11 boards, 3 assists, 3 steals, only 2 turnovers. Aaron Nesmith, 5 of 9, 4 of 5 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 2 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal. He had 1 turnover, and he had a +10 and 16 points. Miles Turner, 6 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from the 3-point line, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 2 blocks, and he had a +7 with 15 points. Andrew Nembhard, 6 of 10, 3 of 5 from 3, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 6 assists, 3 rebounds. He had 1 turnover, a +10 and 17 points. Tyrese Haliburton, 8 of 19, 3 of 10 from the 3-point line, 2 of 2 from the free throw line. He had 5 rebounds, 12 assists. He had 3 turnovers, and one of them was weird. He was like running at Aaron Nesmith, and like threw the ball too hard, and Nesmith like wasn't quite ready for it, or no, I think it was Nesmith that threw it at him because Tyrese was running at him, and Tyrese like bobbles it, and I don't know. It's not really much of a turnover, but I mean it counts, but it was a bad pass. 21 points, +2, plus-minus. Obi Toppin, 3 of 4 from the field, 1 of 2 from the 3-point line, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, and he was a -4 with 7 points. Jarris Walker, 1 of 4. He was 1 of 2 from the 3-point line. He had 4 defensive rebounds. He was a +2 and had 3 points. TJ McConnell, 3 of 8. He had 5 rebounds. He's been rebounding really well, actually, for a point guard. 4 assists. He had 2 steals, +2, and he was 6 points. Benedict Mathurin, 4 of 10, 1 of 4 from 3, 5 of 5 from the free throw stripe. He had 1 rebound, 1 assist, a -2, and 14 points. Looking at the Pacers, I mean, everybody I thought played well. I think that there's moments where Obi Toppin could be better. There are moments where TJ McConnell, I think if he hits a couple of those shots, he's got the 10 points. There was just some that kind of just sat up on the rim. But I thought he played well. He had some really nice steals. He had some great assists. He rebounds the ball really well when he's in there for a guy that's very small. You have Benedict Mathurin, who, again, I thought he got a little too shot happy at times, but he had 14 points and he really contributed in this game. And the 5 of 5, 3 free throws off the bench, that's really important, is that he's getting to the free throw line because he's just been that good. He's that good of a free throw shooter, so you need to get him there. Yeah, I mean, just kind of a rundown. That's it. That's pretty much all I had for game 2. It was such a good win for the Pacers, a much-needed win. They protect home court advantage. They're going to go up to Milwaukee and hope to steal one. They need just one. in my opinion, it'd be nice to come home, obviously, with 2. But I just feel like even if they drop 2 in Milwaukee, they're still in good shape. Would have 2 games left at home that I think they could bury the Bucks with. It's just so difficult to beat this Pacer team at home, which is why you get home court advantage. But again, I still think my prediction stands. I still think this will go 6 games. I think the Pacers win it 4-2, but we'll see. The game 3 will be the toughest game I think that they'll play this whole series. To be honest with you, I think game 3, because of the intensity, because of they just got embarrassed at Indianapolis, so the Bucks will come home and want to get their crowd energized. And what better way to build momentum than get a game 3 win for the Bucks? That'll be very important, but we will talk more about that in our game 3 preview, which is going to be coming out tomorrow, Thursday, that you're listening to is April 24th. So I appreciate you guys listening to this. If you got this far in the episode, if you have any comments that you want to make, leave them on the YouTube channel. I'm always open to discussing more about the Pacers or the Bucks either way. Big final takeaways. I mean, Rick Carlisle, a big difference in this series. He makes so many great adjustments where I think Doc Rivers really struggles. The Pacers, I think, just have too much firepower for this Bucks team. I think the depth is ultimately what's going to be the downfall for this Bucks team. I just don't feel like they can go toe-to-toe with this Pacers team because they're just too deep and can attack you from too many areas. And again, I think the Pacers steal one on the road, and if they come back 3-1, this series is all but over, in my opinion. So interesting takeaways, I think, but for some people, but I think some takeaways that a lot of people will feel are pretty valid. So thanks for listening again. Subscribe on YouTube. Leave in the comments anything that you want to say or discuss. I'm still looking for a co-host, so if you're interested in joining this, I would be more than happy to talk with you and possibly about joining as a co-host as we will continue this on into the off season as well. We'll talk some Indiana Fever. So if you're interested in talking some Indiana Fever and want to do a co-host just for the Fever, we can do that. Or if you want to do both Pacers and Fever, we can do that. So let me know, send me a direct message, comment on YouTube. Hey, I'd be interested in joining the show as a co-host, and I will reach out and we can make some arrangements to talk offline. But again, thank you for listening. If you listen this far, we are at the Pacers Fever Show on all socials. So if you go to Instagram, X, Facebook, and you type in the Pacers Fever Show, you will find us. We are there. We will post over there during the game. After the game, we'll post all these episodes up there as well. And once we really start getting going, we'll start posting some clips and different things like that. But really, this is just about gaining some momentum on the podcast feed, getting some episodes out there, and knocking off some rust of my own because I've not done a Pacers podcast. So let me know how it's going. Rate us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast. Just drop a rating. Let us know how we're doing on the show. Anything that you would like to discuss, just leave me a comment on socials and we would be happy to discuss them. And hopefully we can do some live episodes coming up in this Pacer playoff run. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. And we will see you next time on the Pacers Fever Show. Thank you. And we will talk to you very, very soon.